In a world where technology evolves with lightning speed, staying up to date can feel like chasing a moving target. That's why I've invited top tech experts to share the latest trends and insights with us. Welcome to Tech Talks. Anders Magnus, why is suddenly ESG Tech one of the hottest topics?
Well, for any business today, sustainability is an important topic, a topic that cannot be ignored. So, and with increasing regulations like the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, like CBAM with the Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, you will see that the increasing need for compliance and reporting is one of the main drivers. And also you have the pressure from stakeholders, investors, customers that drives the need for high quality information given to those stakeholders by businesses. And we sometimes say that the age of Excel is dead within sustainability because you need systems, solutions that could give high quality, verifiable, trustworthy data without being a huge burden on the organization with regards to efforts and the amount of time you spend in giving those data to stakeholders.
Are Nordic businesses sort of ready for what lies within CSRD?
Mainly, yes, I would say. And there's, like in any race, there's a stretch in the field. You'll see that there's some leaders that are, spending a lot of time and effort understanding this, interpreting regulations, and finding ways of approaching this. And then in the back of the field, you see businesses that really haven't started yet. But the main part of the businesses are kind of figuring out where to start, how to approach this, and many of them have already started and done quite a bit.
Okay, so let's look at the market of ESG tech. Who are the players?
Well, we did a mapping in Deloitte. We have in Deloitte we have a sustainability tech hub, and that hub has done a mapping of who are the providers of these types of ESG tech solutions. And when they came to around 400 different companies and solutions, they found out, okay, it's about time to stop mapping these. But I think the main players are, of course, the usual suspects like SAP, Oracle, Microsoft, IBM. We see Workiva coming up. So there's some large companies now really moving in, and still a lot of smaller players doing niche solutions.
But in your definition, what is ESG tech?
Well, that's a good question because it could be a lot of different things, and you could basically boil it down to maybe like 4 or 5 different elements or categories. One is kind of the data side and kind of the data management. How do you get control and good data? So data management. Second one is around reporting, disclosures. Which is really in demand at the moment because of the reporting directive coming in. Thirdly, we have the risk and compliance. So how do you make sure that you have control of risk in your value chain? How do you make sure that you are compliant with sustainability requirements? A fourth one could be on how to actually become more sustainable. So process optimization, more efficiency, measuring to make your business and operations more sustainable. And maybe I want to add a last one because what's really interesting is how we see emerging technologies and digital solutions being used for new business models. So how could you apply technology to like AI to build new business models?
This sounds like sort of the brave new world all over again. We've heard it on many other technology places as well. But if you look at it, all these solutions that you're talking about, they never become better than the data that are put in them.
Yeah.
So how do you ensure that data quality that you put in the systems is good enough?
And that's the challenge because we see a lot of companies thinking that, well, let's buy a tool and it kind of fixes it for us. That's a part of it. We usually advise our clients to get a control of your IT landscape and your data landscape first. What requirements do you need to fulfill, and what's the data that you have that you can use to fulfill that. So working with data, understanding, having good data management, good definitions, owners of the data, good processes for bringing that data from the source and up to where it's used is something that we see is becoming more and more important and spent more effort on.
Obviously, one part here is coming from the need to report from CSRD and sort of similar regulations, but the other one might come from sort of creating opportunities when it comes to new business and helping your business to make the right choice. How do you see that divide?
I think if you look at the data you have, if you are good at understanding what kind of the use cases for that data could be. So, for instance, reporting is one. Compliance is one, risk is one. And then if you also look at, what will our customers want to see with regards to the products or services that you're selling in the market, then you have an important stakeholder. And if you look at what are the data we have that could be used for multiple purposes across these needs, then you would see that maybe there's some openings in using that data you're using for reporting for business and customer purposes as well. I don't see it as necessarily as a divide, but it's kind of like a core set of data that you would need that you could use for multiple purposes, so to say.
So again, though, you have the regulations parts that taken care of, and then you talk about the customers, investors. So how will the customers and investors see the results of churning all that data within ESG Tech? We
see that need for trustworthy ESG information following the products and services. It's becoming more and more because the customers again will need to use that information for their reporting or for their targets in becoming more sustainable. So, for instance, we worked with a company last year where we looked at the use of data for corporate reporting, but we also looked at how could you use that data to report to the different contracts that they have with the clients. So they looked at specifically what would be the emissions per service they provide, and what is the opportunity to reduce those emissions in those services.
Okay, but let's look sort of at the more sort of helping us to grow the business part of it, because how can having all this data, you have full control over your CO2 and everything, but how can you actually use this as a tool to make the right decisions and also help shape your future strategy of the firm?
I think insights and data is a prerequisite. And then the question is, how could you actually make a business out of that? And I read a great article actually yesterday in the Financial Times written by the CEO of the Cambridge Institute for Sustainability Leadership. And his take was that reporting is fine, all that is fine, but it's not going to trigger real change. For that to happen, you have to find some sort of market mechanisms that will help drive that change. And that's almost like a criticism to the big focus on reporting. But I think if you need to look for value, what is it with your products that could have a greater value with regards, when you implement or kind of put sustainability into that. And one, obvious example is if you could provide, with increasing CO2 emissions taxes, etc., which is expected, low carbon products like, for instance, steel, aluminum, etc., would have relatively a higher value because you avoid the CO2 tax on those products. So that's one way of kind of putting it, but you need those kind of market drivers there for this to happen.
But you mentioned tax, obviously, but in order for this to be taxed, you need sort of maybe standardized systems, or are they in place already?
Well, the hope with the Sustainability Reporting Directive from the EU is that this is becoming more sustainable and more comparable across, so that you are able to compare one company with another. But still, there's a lot of interpretation and leeway in how you apply this as well. So that's kind of the goal, that companies' sustainability performance will be more comparable, so that investors could make a better choice, right?
Okay. But with that shift though, then the CFO becomes really important, and we see the entire sort of sustainability field moving away from maybe other parts of the business and being a very integrated part of the CFO agenda.
Yeah, indeed. So because the aim of of the EU in sustainability reporting is to have the same level of quality of your sustainability information as your financial information.
So CO2 will become as important as any other financial reporting.
Could be, yeah, as long as it's put a tax on it or money on it, then yeah. Because if you know your CO2 numbers are correct and you use good data on that, that's what you pay the tax on, right? If you don't, you are maybe bound to use some industry average, which is higher that you actually have, and you pay more than you need to. To get to that, applying the processes, internal controls, etc., that the CFO function already has, I think is key. A couple of years ago, the main stakeholder was always the sustainability team or sustainability officer. Now, more often the CFO is the key stakeholder when it comes to the disclosure side. And we see a split where we see that everything that has to do with, reporting, disclosure, etc., is moving more and more into the CFO space. And that's where we see the big rush in ESG tech now. So that's where we have, Workiva, OneStream, SAP, and others moving in and having solutions for, verifiable, auditable reporting of ESG.
So what should Nordic businesses do now?
First of all, if you haven't started, I would definitely have start to get an overview of what are the requirements from stakeholders, and the stakeholders also including regulations. So what are the regulations that apply for you? What are those regulations asking for? What's important for your customers and owners? And then secondly, you need to have an understanding of your IT and data landscape. What do we have today that we could use? Many companies already have, some CO2 emission software or some other type of tool that has ESG data. Like in the HR system, you will have a lot of data on your own workforce, etc. But it's often very fragmented, different quality. It's more or less for many companies, a bit of a jungle to get started there. So get an overview and map your IT and data landscape and see what you have. And then the question is, what is the best solution for you? What systems, and tools could you use to get from where you are today and move to, a smooth and efficient way of reporting high quality data to your stakeholders, and also using that data for performance management, for instance, to get better, to get more sustainable. And that's where we see a lot of companies start in kind of the wrong end. They start with a tool very often because they've heard about and they've seen a demo and it looks very nice, etc. And they kind of say, oh, yeah, this sounds good for us, right? But it's if you don't know your requirements and have an idea what you already have, hold off a bit on selecting a tool, do the background work first, and then it becomes quite apparent what type of solution is good for you.
So do the groundwork first, have order in your house, and then do the selection.
Yeah. And then when you come to the implementing, I think it's key to make sure that you do that in a good way, because the business side is also very important. It's not just an IT implementation, because ESG, like we discussed, is moving from being a bit fragmented and not owned by the CFO space, moving in more into the CFO space, and also the business needs for performance management. So when you do implementations of systems, it's important to think about how you change your process of how you work with ESG, and how do you implement that system so that the organization understands where the opportunities lie and how that tool could help in that. So make sure that your implementation project has that element of change management and all that in it.
Thank you so much for enlightening me, Anders Magnus, and thank you for joining me on Tech Talks.
Thank you.